Okay, you're on, G.
Starting
Welcome
now.
to the ASD Water Dowsers Mastermind Conference Call. These talks are scheduled for the third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and last for about an hour. Today is the 16th of September, 2019. I'm G from NorCal Dowsers in Redding, California. Jeanette and I will be joining your hosts, Sherry Hope and Ed Stillman, for tonight's program featuring James Gamble. This call is open to anyone interested in learning from experienced water dowsers and will be recorded and accessible at ASD's website under the Members Only section. Please hold your questions until your hosts call for them at the end of the guest speaker's talk. Thanks. I'm now turning the program over to Sharon.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Water Dowsers conference call. And I want to let you know that next month, which will be the third Monday of October, that will be October 21st at 5 o'clock, our guest speaker is going to be Gladys McCoy. And I'm sure many of you know she's the co-founder of the Ozark Research Institute. She's a dowser, and she teaches dowsing classes, and her main focus in her classes is the importance of water dowsing. So she was actually elected Dowser of the Year in 1996. She will also be at the West Coast Conference next year, 2020, and we will be having that conference at UC Santa Cruz the first weekend in July of 2020. So be sure and come on for our next one also. Now tonight we have James Gamble, and I'm going to turn this over to Ed Stillman, who's going to introduce James. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. James Gamble, a shaman and a professional water dowser, lives in San Leandro, California. James has been dowsing for nearly 25 years, and he typically uses a pendulum, L-rods, and a Y-rod as his dowsing tools. Shirley Runco, who sadly became a sky dowser just a few days ago, was one of James' primary dowsing instructors, and Shirley was also a very good friend of mine. James has written several books and has had a number of articles appear in various publications, including the American Dowser Quarterly Digest. James wrote the article, Dowsing for Ghosts, published in the spring 2015 issue of the American Dowser Quarterly Digest. He also wrote a follow-up article entitled More Experiences Dowsing for Ghosts for the fall 2015 edition of the Digest. At the 2018 West Coast Conference in Santa Cruz, California, James gave a talk entitled Using a Pendulum and Intuition to Put Out a Forest Fire. James has an interest in the future of dowsers. He says we can find water, but his concern is in convincing the public and also teaching new dowsers how to dowse. James, please take over and tell us how you got started in dowsing.
My background was in sales. Since 1972, I was an outside salesman selling binding and copy machines. I did that for about 10 years, and then I sold other types of binding machines. I was always an outside salesperson. And in 1990, I started my own business working with small mom-and-pop companies, usually people who bought a franchise of printers, for people who needed to learn how to get new business. And unfortunately, they believed too much of the salesman's rhetoric about it, and then when they got out in the field, they found out that they couldn't get new business. And I taught them how to do door-to-door cold calling. After a couple months or so, I called them back and said, how you doing? And they said, oh, business is terrible. And I say, well, why not? You know, are you doing your cold calling? No. Are you doing your telemarketing? No. So at that point, we came up with a lie that we both knew was a lie, but we pretended it was the truth, which was, why don't I do the cold calling for you that you would do if you had more time? And so I have, instead of one client, I usually had anywhere up to 10 clients. Some people I work for one day a week, sometimes one every 2 weeks, and some people for one day a month. And they came and they go, but I was never out of business. At some point in time, in 1993, I was at Esalen, which is, if you don't know it, it's a magical place. It is incredible. They've got these hot tubs built into the side of the wall, stone tubs looking out into the ocean and looking out, and there's wonderful. You see whales going by, and I'm seeing all sorts of interesting things. I was taking, at that time, a course in intuition. And what happened was one person would sit in the middle of the room and say, I have this issue with my sister. And everybody else would go into trance, start writing down everything that came to them. And usually it was spot on. Now, the people that were giving this course said, we've been doing this for 20 years, and every couple years or so, no matter where we are in Europe or America, one of this happens. And we come across somebody who is ready to become elevated to become a shaman. And guess who that was? Me. So they put me in the chair in the middle of the room. They went through all this stuff to do, and when they're done, they said, aha, you're a shaman. I said, aha, now what? They said, as you go along, teachers will show up in your life. And they did. And so everything that had anything to do with the mind over matter, I started looking for. And one of the things I found in the paper where I lived is this guy that was going to do a dowsing course. I don't think he was associated with the American Society of Dowsers, but I went up there. He gave me 2 L rods made from bent coat hangers, and I walked over a water source, and the rods came in and indicated. And from there, he gave me this course about how to find water, where to go. It was all first level. It was nothing more than walking over a water source, but he taught me where to go. I thought, that's fine. I went home. And once a year or so, I'd take out the rods and play with them, but nothing happened. Then about 2005, I became a shaman in 93. I learned the first course in 95. And then in 2005, I found a dowser named Jack Coel who was getting paid to do this. Not only getting paid, but he's making between $500 and $1,000 a pop to do this. Woohoo! And I thought, well, son of a gun, I can do that. All I got to do is go out and find people that need a water well. So I started cold calling. Sometimes I cold called. I started off actually with water drillers, not knowing that water drillers really don't like dowsers. We'll go into that later. And I found one of the things that worked for me were magnetic business cards. Let me go back just a little bit. Whenever I go into a business like this, which is different, I actually form it. I go into the county seat and start a business, and my business is called Water Wellness. And I got letterhead and envelopes and business cards and the thing on the computer whose name Slippers is going by. But I also got magnetic business cards, and I found out how far out I had to go. I work up and down the west coast of California, from Paso Robles all the way up to Santa Rosa, and then all the way up into the gold country and everywhere in between. And I found out where the people are not getting country water, where they have to have either bring in their water or have a water well. And so I stopped at each post box and took my magnetic business card that said James Gamble, Water Wellness, phone number, picture of me, have a picture of yourself on it, and I slapped it on the back of the postal box. Now, if you leave it on the front, the postal guy comes along and will take it off. So if you put it on the back, when the people are leaving their house, they'll see it. Sooner or later, they'll stop and get out of the car and pull it off. Now, if they need a water well, guess who they call? And if they don't need a water well, what do they do with the magnet? That's right. They put it on the refrigerator, where it stays until they need it. I've had guys call me up and say, I found this thing on my refrigerator. I have no idea how it got there, but I need a water well. And we have this big backyard, and it doesn't need to be very much. I just need water to do the agricultural stuff. And there it is. So every time I go to a party, I slap on one of my magnetic cards. And sometimes on people's cars, too. Nobody throws away a magnetic card. They stick it on the refrigerator. So that was one thing. I went all throughout the non-incorporated areas, and I put out, one at a time, 2,200 of these magnets. And each one of them would be good for one or two deals a month. Now, in this case, since I was still working for my other businesses, I only worked one day a week, which was usually Wednesday or Thursday, and the rest of the time I didn't do it. So the first year of my business, which was 2007, I found business. I did wells for 73 different people with a total of 175 water sources. And that made me $29,000. So if I was doing that full time, I would have made next year $148,000. Except in 2008, everything went south. But I kept on doing it. Another way I found of getting business is a postcard. Now, every day we get these postcards in the mail, and what do? Bam! Tear them up, throw them in the trash can. But this one works. Think about this. This is a plain white 4x6 card, and on one side it's got the address of the person it's going to and a hand stamp. Before they throw it away, what do? They turn it over. What's on the other side? Around the outside, I have this bright orange sunshine pattern, and right in the middle it says, need a water well? Call this number, period. That's all there is to it. If they need it, they'll call it. Sometimes they put it in the file and call later. Those are good for anywhere from 6 to 8 jobs a year. I have this list of things. What do I do in my typical water job stuff that I got from Shari? And let me see. Typical water dowsing job, I did it everywhere. I would take jobs that nobody else would take. Sometimes I would go to the drillers in the area and say, if you'll let me, I'll do a freebie for you, which will get you business. One time, and I recorded everything I got. I didn't mess with the IRS. Did a job way up in east of Sebastopol. This guy was a singer that I've never heard of. And I did a job for him, and he gave me $20 for gas plus one of his albums, which was worth $15, and I declared that $65. What's typical? Nothing much was typical for a while, except that I wasn't getting the big jobs. I was working for mom and pops, people in the hills who needed a water well, and for whom I would find water at 600 feet, which might come up with 3 gallons a minute, they were happy with that. Then I got a job in Salinas, one of the big farms, and that was a revelation because I went and doused that area, and it was 900 feet deep. Not bad. And then I started swinging my pendulum to see how many gallons a minute were going to come up. Because up to now, if I got 3 gallons a minute or 5 gallons a minute or 10 gallons a minute, my customers were really happy. Now I'm working in a cotton field, and I'm saying 20 gallons a minute, whoa, 30, 40, 50 gallons a minute. And I'm going, son of a gun. And I didn't know what to do, so I finally wrote down, I can't guarantee how many gallons a minute you'll get, but it's going to be more than 80 gallons a minute. Whoa! He says, well, James, we usually get 2,000 gallons a minute. And I thought, wow. And that's where we went from there. And they paid on time every time. So what else we hear? When I get a call from a dowsing client, what questions do I ask? One is where they are. I've got people calling me up from, what can I say, an all-day ride in a car out into the desert, and I say, thank you, but no thank you. Also, how big is it? What they need the water for. And usually I don't want to go more than 3 hours for a job, but I will sometimes, but usually I won't. What do I do before I go out to the client's property? Nothing. I just make sure I have everything in my bag. And by the way, in my bag, which I carry at all times, besides my extra pendulum, my L rods, and my Y rod, I keep insect repellent, poison ivy repellent, and sunscreen, among other things. I also keep all the contracts I need and backup stuff, things like that. Sometimes I'll ask how many acres they're talking about, and if they do have more than 5 acres, I'll make sure that they have a map of their territory before I arrive at it. Do I map dows? Yes, every chance I get. And the technique I use is just to lay out the map, and they're always trying to get me a contours map, which, of course, to us doesn't make any difference at all. We don't care. But they do. Sometimes a water driller will come on saying, oh, yes, we know the area, and we can do it, and don't worry about a thing. Wow, I'm running out of time already. My goodness. Let me see, what else? Okay, let's go on to some other stuff. No questions just yet. Water drillers. I have gone online, and you might go on YouTube and check out water dowsing, and you'll find these people that absolutely hate us, and they think that we are scammers, and that they will say out loud, yes, you cannot, nobody really knows where the water is, and they only, dowsers are only right 20% of the time, and don't do it because my family has been drilling water wells in this area for 2 generations. We know where the water is. You don't need a dowser. So what happens? They go out, they drill a hole, and it's dry. They drill another hole, and it's dry. Now the owner's down $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. The reason that water drillers do not like dowsers is because when we douse, they only get to drill once. And their contract will say, somewhere in the back part of it, which they get their clients to sign, it will say, nobody knows where the water is, but we will do our best to find it. But if we don't find it, you still have to pay us for the dry hole. What a racket is that? Tools I use the pendulum with a map to find out where the water is, And then from there, we go out, and I use the L rods to find the edges of the water of the stream, and then I use the Y rod to find the best place to dig. That's about that. My goodness, we're running out of time already. I thought this would be shorter. One thing that always irritated me was that people would say, what is your ratio of successes? And I would say, God, you know, every time I do this, I find water. And yet, when I get done, the client will call me up and say, hey, you know what? The driller hit a dry hole, and it's your fault. And I could never figure it out because I thought me and the driller were on the same page, that we had the same goal to do the best thing for the client. And it's not true. With us, we want to find water for the client. With the water driller, they want to see how many dry holes they can drill before they get kicked off the property. They get paid for drilling dry holes, and we don't. Shazam, water drillers. Okay, let's get into the future of dowsers. We are the water witches. Everyone who's a good dowser is also a water witch. We have the ability to create physical change by the power of our mind. They might have said it already. Shirley Runkel and I started a business called Quantum Weather to keep hurricanes from coming ashore. Shirley could sit at her kitchen table and turn a hurricane coming up through the Caribbean in a different direction. I wanted to sell this to State Farm because every time a hurricane comes ashore, it costs them $5 to $10 billion. And if the hurricane doesn't come ashore, they don't have to pay anything, and they make more money. But we never got past the secretary. One day we will, and I will still have that letter where the secretary says, yes, I understand you can save us $50 billion a year, but probably this isn't really what we're looking for, and good luck on where you're going. As dowsers, we can do other things. When I have apprentices, I always teach them the easy stuff right off the bat, which is, as you're driving down the street, every light will be green. And once you have this spell in place, you don't have to think about it again. As you get on the freeway, there will always be an opening for you. I don't have to think about this. When I get on the freeway, there's always an opening. And this is a third easy one. No matter where you're going, no matter how long it takes to get there, when you get there, 2 seconds before you arrive, there will become a parking spot for you. Happens every time. I can teach that easily, almost over the phone. And then it gets into more difficult things. Controlling the weather around the world. I can control the weather sitting in my house, any place in the world, in an area up to 3 miles in diameter for up to a maximum of 48 hours. Happens, something I can learn. Then we get into the big stuff. Hurricanes, tornadoes. Tornadoes are not that hard to knock down if you can get them in a hurry. The problem with tornadoes is they spring up, they go over, make all this mass destruction, and then they go away. If we could set up a group of people all around the country that we were called upon every time there's a tornado, we could knock it down in a hurry. Think about this one more thing, too. Lawyers, doctors, chiropractors, all these other people go to school, make money, graduate, and get paid $400, $500, $600, $5,000 an hour to do things. How many lawyers and doctors are there in the country? A gazillion of them. How many functional, accurate dowsers are there? maybe around 1,200. At some point in time, we're going to run out of water. Everybody's talking about it. It's the truth. We have the exact same amount of water, fresh water, which is, by the way, 1% of all the water in the world. We have the same amount of water as always, every year, except that every year there's 150 to 200,000 more people that are thirsty. And at some point in time, there's not going to be enough for everybody to go around. And then the water dowsers will step out and take our place, our rightful place, as the ones who can get the job done. And we're going to charge $10,000 a pop to get it done because we deserve it. We are the only ones that can find underground water. Yeah, that's true. So, how are we doing? Yeah, we still got some time. The reason we're not going back to the thing with how come dowsers are not 100%, we're not 100%, we are 100%, but when the drillers come up on the property, they will say, you know what, it's kind of hard to get our truck all the way over there. I think we're going to drill over here. And I'm not there to say, whoa, no, drill where the stake is. That's where you drill. And remember, the owner of the property doesn't know any better. He says, well, you're the expert. Go ahead. And so they drill a hole and it's dry. What happens then? They say, oh, there's a dry hole. That dowser didn't get it. The dowser calls me up and says, it's your fault. My fault. No, I learned that in fact, on one of the last dowsers I did in the Salinas, I put in 3 stakes. One of them was 2 streams coming together. One of them was 1 stream. Another one was one on the back. In comes the driller, dry hole. And I say, this cannot be. I drove down there 3 hours to get there. And guess what? My stake was over here, and they drilled over there. And my client said, what? Is that true? Why did you drill over there? And they said, well, yeah. And he said, I'm not going to pay you until you give me some water. Next time they took me, then they took it over to where the 2 streams were one on top of the other, and they got 30 gallons out of that. And the one up in front, and they got 40 gallons out of that. Then they went back to my area, and they got 20 gallons out of that. So everybody was happy. So think about the future of dowsers. Number 1, it's time for us to stop being those funny people that do these funny things that nobody really believes in and get us some respect. In my generation, the dowsers used to do the job. Usually some old guy who would do it for a bottle of whiskey, or he'd do it for fun, or he'd do it because he's a golf buddy. Dowsers should charge at least $400 to $600 per plot, plus mileage, plus cost of what you have to do to get there. We are sooner or later going to be accepted and accolated because there's not that many of us. And when things start going south and when everything dries up, who are they going to call? They ain't going to call Ghostbusters. They're going to call water dowsers. What? We done? Still there? And
yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
Yep.
Okay, one more thing. Those of us who are serious dowsers can transition into whatever name you want to call yourself. You want to call yourself an energy worker, a co-creator, a wizard, a witch, doesn't matter. The fact is, we can learn to create physical change in the world with the power of our mind. We can put out a forest fire sitting in the kitchen, knowing where it is, in 24 hours. Boom, it's out. And I can show you how to do that. Any other questions? Ready to go? Are we still going?
We're still going here.
We're still going.
Oh, okay. What else do we need here? Lots of tools. Specifically, how do I determine the water veins, how deep, and the gallons per minute? I use a pendulum for that. I always carry a pendulum with me, but when you think about it, a pendulum is really just an extension cord. It's a cord between me and spirit. And the pendulum doesn't have any power at all. So it doesn't really matter. So you can use your car keys and swing them around. You can use, there's one time I went off and forgot to bring my pendulum. I just took off my necklace, and I've got a jade piece on there, and I use that, and it works just fine. But finding the depth of the water and how many gallons a minute it's going to be has to do with being good at it and practice. And just to be on the safe side, I'll determine where I think the water is, and then I'll add 30%. Just to be safe, I can say, okay, the water is at 400 feet, but just to be safe, you should go down another 150 feet because to get the best possible water. And a good driller will determine where's the best possible water. Same thing with the gallons per minute. How many gallons per minute? Again, just to be safe so that there's not going to be a dry hole, I'll say you're going to get 10 gallons a minute, but just to be safe, you ought to keep on drilling just to get that extra and make sure how many gallons you're going to get is what you want. Specifically, blah, 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 the quality of the water, no, I do not check the quality of the water. On one of my magnetic cars, my second generation, I do have a second line on there that says we will check your existing pumps, and that way I could bring him a pump guy, and he would share his commission with me, or I would get him more business, or who knows, we'd get more business either way. Any more questions? Nope, we're still going. Okay. Dowsing class, Jack Coel, boom, boom, boom. Putting out forest fires. How to find people that can do this. There are people that have ability, but everybody has to have a certain power quotient. And this is something we learn as we go along that we can douse. So I take a person who wants to be a co-creator or whatever, and I say on a scale of 1 to 10, with an 8 being the minimum, what's the number of this person's power quotient? Because if they don't have the power to do it, they can't do it. A person can come on a drag strip next to a dragster that's doing 10,000 horsepower and saying, yes, my Volkswagen will do it because I really, really want it to happen, but it won't happen. So if your person you're working with doesn't have the ability, it's not going to work. We had a friend of mine and I've been doing the forest fires. It works better with 3 people. 3 people are better than 2. 2 are better than 1. 5 is okay, and anything more than that, people get in each other's way. So we worked with this woman who said, yes, I'm a witch. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I know what I'm doing. I've been doing all sorts of spells, and we took her at her word. There was a fire in Big Sur, and it was moving south, and I took 1/3 of it as in a triangle, and visualize a triangle with a point at the bottom. I took the right side, my friend took the left side, and the witch took the top. In 24 hours, we checked the fire. It never went any farther right and never went any farther left, and the fire went merrily down the canyon. At that time, we doused her for power, and she didn't have any power. Nothing. Zero. I said, you've been doing spells for 10 years. What kind of spells do you do? World peace. They always say, world peace. There's been no world peace in the world forever, ever. So now we check out people. But even that alone, sometimes we'll work in somebody's house and set up, if you pardon the expression, a spell to put out a fire, and we get the location of the fire from CAL FIRE or from PG&E, and we know exactly where it is. We set up a map, we put a circle around it, and that's what we're going to hit. And the three of us will either work independently together to create this surge of energy, or we'll have our heavyweight up front with the two people in back raising energy, and at the time we put our right hand on the back of the heavy hitter, and she, and it's always a she, hits that fire, and it's mostly out. By the time we're done, we give it 24 hours. What happens is you get an apprentice who's never been around a lot of energy. Myself and my partner will start running up energy, bringing in the force, bringing up the power from the earth, bringing in the sexual energy. Everything we do, put it into a ball and explode it out the window. And the person who's the newest person will not be able to handle it, and they just go insane, and we never see them again. So you have to treat people, you have to train them as you go along. I get 20 minutes to 6. Are we done yet?
I've got a question for you. This is Sherry Hope. And I'm wondering, do you do water diversion when you, like if you come up with a well that doesn't have enough water, maybe the driller's drill bit went down at an angle and they didn't get enough or not any? So how do you do your water diversion work?
I do the same thing. I'll determine how far, where it has to be at, and I'll go find a water stream, and then I do the thing with where you stick the handle in the water and you'll hit it on the side, and usually the ideal place to do this is way up at the mountainside, where I don't have to push it very far. All I'd have to do is push it about 6 inches way up at the top, and from there it goes down there right to the water well. And then I can also do it by a map.
Okay, and what tools do you use on the map?
Say again?
What tools do you use when you divert on the map?
Just the pendulum to determine where the well is, where the water is and what directions it's going. That's about it. And I put a pencil down where it is and give a little tap with my finger, just a little bit, so it'll change direction.
Yeah, that actually works quite well. I did that. I've done that myself. The only reason I'll do it in person is if I'm working with a client that needs to have you there in person, because you can tell that they are not going to believe you if you tell them you put a pencil on a map and hit it and the water moves. So, how about you, Ed? How do you divert water?
Well, I do it exactly the same way. I get the line of bearing to where I want to go with it, and I just go ahead and mentally set up the dowsing situation that I'm going to move this water so many feet that way, and I mark where I want it to end up, and I simply just do it. It's awfully hard to describe, but that's my technique for it, and it works. Worked for decades.
My latest endeavors on that are being in the hills of Oakland Hills, where water is coming down. There's a stream somewhere, and it's winding up somebody's basement. So,
whoops.
Yeah. So then I want to move it a little bit to the side, but I don't want to go in anybody else's basement. And last, of course, I want to call on them in 2 weeks and say, by the way, do you have any water in your basement? Which not too cool. But so I just needed to make it go wide enough from the house and between the houses so it goes down and hits the storm drain.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just very careful with where I want to send that water and move it, and I want to be sure that it's going to end up where I want it because I've already done the dowsing of the area where I want it to go. So that's how it works. I have a question for you. What is the deepest well that you have dowsed and successfully drilled? It's kind of a thing after all these years. You must have one or two that are really deep, and you've done them.
Sherry was asking about different things that I dowse for, and I grabbed this. I have a copy of every contract I've done, and I keep it forever. And she said, what kinds of things are there? And this happened to be a place in Salinas. It's a ranch, and the water depth is 950 feet. And it came up with 1,850 gallons. They also, because it was a farm, they wanted to know the percentage of chlorides and nitrates.
Yeah.
And so in this case, determined that the chlorides was 25 to 50 parts per million, and the nitrates were 30 to 40 parts per million. And that seemed to keep them happy. So
yeah. And I do that essentially the same way. Those kind of things I want to know about before I really get going on something too. Is the chloride really bad in that area that I've got water? And is it potable and palatable? You know, that's the other thing too. Yeah. I'm careful with that, very careful with that.
Yeah, I mean that's part of that is in my initial programming of I want to find water that's going to be deeper than this and not so deep as that, and have good tasting potable water. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick situation we had. My wife and I had 24 acres, and we wanted to turn it into a subdivision. And unfortunately, when we were working there, it turned out that I dowsed how deep we had to go to get enough water to do this subdivision. And we ended up actually dowsing 1,900 feet. You know, that was what I predicted for the driller, and we ended up at 1,930 feet with all the water we needed. But honest to goodness, there was a little water at 240 feet, and then there was nothing down to 1,930 feet. And we were just sweating bullets. And, oh, my God, we got enough money to pay for this one. Yeah, so it worked.
And you have to know your driller, too, to make sure that he's not going to drill 2 or 3 dry holes.
No, actually, I had worked with this driller for quite a long time, and he was happy that I would bring this business to him, and he was being truthful about it. I can tell, basically.
Yeah, you can tell it, right?
That all worked out, and we then were able to go ahead and do the subdivision.
Good.
Yeah, it worked.
Wow.
So, James, this is Sherry again. I'm wondering, what's your most memorable water dowsing job?
I'm looking back, and nothing was particularly bad or particularly good. I keep seeing in my mind this thing where I had to drive my car up this dirt road up to the top of a mountain, and I had a trickster with me, and I found water, and it was just absolutely perfect. And then I walked about 20 feet away and turned around and said, "Is everything I learned there absolutely correct?" I got, "No." And I went back and doused it again, and it was just nothing. So, so when I get ready to go, I make sure that now, there's no tricksters around or no tricksters. What's the other thing? Whatever. But yeah, they'll create havoc sometimes. But for the most part, I had one guy that it became evident to me that he wasn't going to pay me, because he'd say, "Well, how about here? Is there anything here?" And then he'd back up 2 feet and say, "What about here? Is there any order?" And I said, "Okay, I get it. You're not going to pay me." And I started wrapping things up. And then he came out with a check exactly half of what I asked for, a certified check he'd already made up. So at that time, I didn't know how to move streams, but I figured it was just karma, and maybe I'm working off some karma. Otherwise, I could have waited until the well was in place and then moved the stream over 10 feet.
Yeah. That was a good move.
Probably. So, anybody else?
Okay. Do we have any water dowsers on the line who would like to ask a question? How about you, Bill Getz? Do you have a question?
Oh, well.
Wait a minute. Okay, I got to do the mute thing. I did the wrong thing. There we go.
Yeah, one of the things that I do, I have a, I'm getting a lot of noise on the line. I had a water well driller ask me one time how I found a site, because he went on the site when it was nighttime, and it was a new moon, and he stood on the woman's back porch and just determined where the best place was to drill. And he had asked me how I did it, and I said, well, I had kind of looked at all of the veins and measured each one to see which one was the best one. And he said, just ask where the best spot is to drill. So I modified what he did about 20 years ago, and my approach to it is to look for the best place to drill to get the greatest amount of good tasting, clear, potable water that meets the state requirements and the homeowner's needs. And I will scan with a Y rod, and when it pulls down, I triangulate in from 3 different directions, and then go over and isolate that spot, and then we'll ask the questions to detail each of the things for the depth of the water, what was necessary for a reserve depth, and what kind of static level would they get, and what kind of gallons per minute. And I've been working now with a number of well drillers. I
was reading your text. I didn't know all you wanted was the mirror technique.
No, now I want more.
All right.
Okay.
But I had a rough day. I felt horrible, and then I figured out that the reason I'm not.
Okay.
All right. And what I wanted to just conclude with is, in New York State, because this used to be a prehistoric ocean, you cannot drill more than about 350 feet without hitting salt. And you can hit salt mines at 350 feet. Anything all the way up the Hudson Valley, across from Albany, out along the center part of New York State and all the way out to Toledo, Ohio. That's all salt formations when you go deep. So you have to find something, preferably that you try to find something under 300.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
I was thinking about what was the most interesting dows. Do you still want to hear that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
This guy had about 50 acres, and he and his partner put me in the back of a Jeep with a dog, and they went drive out. I determined by map dowsing where the water was, and they had a dog with us, and we'd be going along, and they had all these gophers everywhere, and the dog would jump out of the Jeep, run up there and grab one and kill it, and then get back in the Jeep. And it did that about 5 times. And then they were talking. We got right to the point where I said, okay, stop here. And I took out both my L rods, and I was holding it in such a way so that they knew that I was not manipulating it in any way. And they were kind of fluttery about my being a water witch. And so I knew where the water was just by looking over, and I held up my brass L rods, and I said, "Seek!" And all of a sudden they both turned right without my doing anything, and that's where the water was. And of course that really freaked them out. But it was fun.
Great story.
So interesting. Do we have any other water dowsers who want to make a comment?
Are there any witches out there?
Water witchers, huh?
No, not water witchers. Are there anybody who wants to learn how to put out a forest fire to keep their own house from burning down?
Yay, yeah. You got a few minutes to talk it.
Now, this is Sherry. James and I were talking about this on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and because we here in Oroville have had 4 close fires, actually, in the last 4 years. And I had used his method to protect my house. And for the first fire that came in about 4 years ago, it came in on the east side of my property. And with that protection in place, it came only within like a block and a half of the property. So on the second fire, it came from the west side, came down the hill, was traveling across the neighbor's 40 acres, and almost got to my property line when the plane came over and put the fire out. So with the fire retardant. And it actually had put the fire out right just on the edge of where I had put the protection. So it did not even cross over my property. Now, last weekend we had another fire, which came from the south side of my property. So it came up to within about like 200 feet of my south property line and was put out. So this really fast action of numerous fire tankers, and we had a huge fleet of the firefighters on the ground with the fire trucks coming and, controlling the edge of the fire. So they had it out within about 4 days. It, came within about 200 feet. So totally almost surrounded by fire, and it never even crossed my property line.
You said that you did protection of your own before I gave you the...
I did, and when you were telling me about your protection process, it was almost identical to what I'd done.
Okay.
Hey, this is Dan in Tucson.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
This is Dan, and thank you so much. I was curious, can you guys just mention briefly, I had 2 questions, one about water dowsing, but I wanted to know if you could share any information about that protection method that you guys employed, especially for the fire, because I had that similar incident for a friend of mine who had to evacuate for fire, but I put protection around his property, and there were properties around him that burned, but his property didn't get burned, and I'm not sure, about other people's techniques for that.
You have the ability, my brother.
Apparently.
You have the ability. And Sherry has what I told her recently, and I'm sure she can tell you specifically what I do, but if you put protection on his house and the fire on both sides didn't burn and yours didn't, so, you got it. You can be trained.
Well, that sounds great. Let me ask my water question. I had somebody ask me one time about increasing their well flow. They had an existing well, but the flow was so low that they needed to either dig another well or somehow get the existing well to increase flow. Are there any techniques or any ideas about increasing the flow on an existing well?
Well, for one thing, you can douse right next to the well. I mean, if it's like, find out how deep it is. If somebody will know, sometimes they put those wells at 60 feet and the water table has gone down. So you can douse them. There might be all sorts of water 10 feet away going straight down.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that one too. That's essentially what I have to do at times too. Douse the area. See where you got to go. Follow the aquifers. And see where they go, and see what happens.
Yep. And that's the aquifers dry up. All of a sudden, the San Joaquin Valley is going to be a big pool again. And 10 years later, the same thing with the Salinas Valley. And when things start to go bad and people run out of water, guess who are they going to call?
I would like to add one technical thing that is being done by a very limited number of drillers to develop the water in a well. And what it does is they use high-pressure pure nitrogen, and they shock the well by lowering what looks like a torpedo almost, and it emits a blast of nitrogen about every 5 seconds. And what it does is it cracks the rock around the borehole for a distance of 25-foot radius. And it can increase it's a technical thing that costs about $2,500 to do, but they can increase the water flow anywhere from 10 to 40 times.
Wow.
It's an amazing tool. You can look up a website that's Claverack Pump Service, and they describe the system in their website. I've been working with them for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's amazing at what they can do to develop the water flow.
Yeah, I've heard about that. So thank you for introducing that to everybody, Bill.
All right.
I've heard it. I would say done it on a couple of the wells that I did.
Say again?
Yeah.
Okay. So, no more questions?
Right. Well, if you have any more water dowsing stories, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. With your ability to impact with energy, have you given any thought to remediating the effects of 5G in the way that it will sterilize the human race and basically cause all our children? It's already damaged the DNA. And
I have no idea what you're talking about.
The 5G network, which is rolling out by the big telecoms, putting in these small cell towers all along every 6 houses.
What does this have to do with water dowsing?
Because I'm asking your a question about your ability, relating to your ability to stop hurricanes, to stop fires, to stop tragedy, to stop danger to humanity with energy, with intention, with divine alignment. And I'm asking, has anybody ever given consideration to this thought? Because I have and can share something written by Dr. Martin Pell of the University of Washington, who
I can answer this. I can answer it.
Thank you.
The answer is, up to this point, no. But what I find when I'm working with people is that we have abilities to do things, but we don't know how to do it. So, or we've never gone. Nobody likes, like people say, you can knock down a hurricane. Really? Wow. I'll try that next time. But in this case, I've never heard of that particular problem. But if you were to work up a something to the effect of, this is the evil empire, and we want to somehow, some way, knock it down or neutralize it, you could find people that could do that for yourself.
Okay, so maybe she can, maybe Marissa can look up some more information on that and see if she can find someone who knows how to do that and, let us know sometime. So thank you.
Or try it herself and see if it works. Try it herself.
Right. You might be able to transform the energy into beneficial energy. So there's various things you can do. I don't think we've gotten into that issue yet since we don't have 5G here yet. So at any rate, any more questions on water dowsing for James?
Hi, I have a question about this whole evening. First of all, you're spot on with the well drillers, spot on. The second question I want to say, or the first question I should say, is that so basically what you're saying is a thought is a thing. That if you can transform the thought, it will transform to something tangible. Is that what basically have the thought, focus on it, and then it turns into a thing, like stopping the hurricane, the forest fire, the protection, what so forth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well put.
Okay.
Very good, Carla.
All right. Thank you. I plan to come and see you guys next year at your convention. That's the big one.
Oh, West Coast Conference, right? First week of...
I want to come out to your convention next year. I'm really hoping forward. And the gentleman who gave the meeting tonight, you're spot on.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully I'll be at the convention, and come find me, and I'll work with you.
Thank you. And thank you for having the meeting.
Okay.
And I have a question about the fire protection. How large of an area can you protect? Is it just your land because it's just your business to protect your land, or can you ask to protect the whole neighborhood?
The protection spell is specifically for a house.
Okay.
And
so you just do your own home or area.
It's not my friend, one of the people I've worked with, has a vision of an inverted power grid that looks like an upside down walk, and she did this on a person's property in which she did one for the house and one for the barn, and the fire came through and cleaned out everything, except here's this house and a barn that not only are they intact, but they have the trees and the grass in a perfect circle all the way around.
Wow, that's great.
If I could comment on that, if that's all right.
Sure.
You can also do this because I've learned to protect land through my intention. You can protect property from windstorms. You can protect properties from lightning. So those of us that don't have hurricanes or forest fires, there's other things that we can do to protect the land that we live on, and it's all done through intention. And as with dowsing and water dowsing, it's not us, it's the energy of the universe that's doing it. So if we learn to and practice and work with the energy of the universe, there's so many things that we're capable of doing that we're not even where we are.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. Just willing to take it on and willing to try this and that and tinker with it until you get it to work. Or working with somebody like, if the wind is coming in, do you want it to go that way, or do you want it to split, a mile up that way and all the wind goes right around you? I mean, there's different ways to play with it.
Well, right. For all these other topics about dowsing, there's a dowsing conference call tomorrow at 5:00 Pacific time, and if you go on to dowsers.org, you can look up the phone number and the access code for that one. It's run by Roxanne Louise, and so that's tomorrow at 5:00 Pacific time. Okay. So we should go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll see if Ed, what else? Do you have any other things to clarify with James?
Oh, my. I still feel that in Arizona, where we are, we had terrible lack of rain, and a lot of wells were going dry. And I was really just working a lot with individual people and to find out whether I could find out if I could deepen their well or to get more water, or if there was anything there to do, or if there was any water wells on their property. And it was go to house number 1, then house number 2, and house number 3, and it was just a whole area north of Phoenix and south of Flagstaff that was really in a mess. And it was one of the things that I did that I was grateful to my own dowsing ability to give these people reasonable like information. And
grateful to his own dowsing ability.
Right. Pardon me?
I said, you can't hear me, can you?
Yeah.
So I muted everybody because we're right at the end of the call, and so everybody could hear Ed and James.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead and finish out, Ed.
Okay. There was just a real large number of homes, and I ended up starting at the first and going all the way through them, and the word was out, and the phone was ringing, and it was just a feeling from my own dowsing that just made me very, very happy. That's all I can say about it, because generally these people. Pardon me?
I hope you doubled your rates, because you're the only person there that can bring them water, and they will gladly pay for it.
Yeah, I used my standard rate, and it was okay. I was happy to do it. Anyhow, it was just one of these things out of the 35 years of dowsing and so forth. It was just that thing that did it for me.
What is your standard rate?
Well, it would get up to 1,000, and it depended on what I was doing. And if it was just a simple job of finding out if water was on the property, I would map dowse it first and then go to the property and charge $500 or $800. It just depended, and sometimes I'd be asking $2,000.
Good for you.
But this is in northern Arizona, and frankly, I was the dowser for the area until we moved away and came back to California. And
good for you. Yeah.
And you know your point about needing additional young people, we really needed it because when I left, there were not any dowsers who were really up in their abilities to do this, and I didn't know who to turn to give them a leeway and say, okay, you got to learn to do this now. It was tough. And this was northern Arizona, away from Phoenix and south of the flag. And I wish I could have done more on that one.
Well, young people are looking for jobs, and they don't want to be having, a college debt for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great idea if you can get somebody to understand the possibilities involved and for them to become an independent a person making money.
Well, that's true. And then what I would have to do is do field dowsing with these people one at a time or two at a time, maybe three at a time. That would be all right. And to do that and to take them through real dowsing situations. We're going to a site, there's a problem, and then they can begin to learn some things that are really useful to them.
What are you
but I'm 83 years old now, and so it's getting much more difficult for me to do that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. But it's reasonable also for you to have a course in which you charge a going rate. I mean, $400 a week or $400 a month, whatever, for them to pay to learn this job. And when they come out the other end, they're independent.
Yeah, they're independent, and they're well brought up in what they have to do to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I take on students every once in a while individually, take them out on the job with me, show them how I dowse and all the specifics. So, and I've got one trainee right now. And then we've worked with the children both at the West Coast Conference and in like some of the farm day down in Kings County when about 2,000 kids came through, and we taught at least 300 of them how to dowse for water.
Cool.
So
Very
we've
cool.
got the dowsing school coming up at the West Coast Conference, so that'll be on the first Friday of the conference. So if you haven't gone to that, be sure and come. It's basically when you learn water dowsing, you can learn to dowse for anything else. So we highly recommend you learn to water dowse first.
Yeah, and the water basic dowsing school is water dowsing. I was in that as first just learning, and then working my way up to being the director for the basic dowsing school for 19 years. So,
wow. You paid your dues.
That's the important thing.
You paid your dues.
Yes, I paid my dues.
Very good.
God,
well,
in her infinite wisdom, will be welcoming you with open arms.
Do you have any final comments, James, on how people can get a hold of you?
You have my phone number, which is 510-697-3076.
Okay. Did you want to give out your email?
510-697-3076.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Jeanette, are you on the line?
I'm here. Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm going to let you make comments now.
Hi, James. This is Jeanette from NorCal Dowsers. I want to thank you for being on the program tonight. You have a lot to share. You're definitely passionate about dowsing, and I want to thank you for presenting over the years at these conferences as well. We sat in at the last West Coast conference a year and a half ago when you spoke, and it was so good because that was before the big fires here in Redding and the surrounding areas where it later on hit Paradise. But one of our dowsers here, a few of us showed up to your class, and one of the dowsers here, her property, we were working on protecting her house, which her house was protected, and one of the techniques you actually mentioned was putting 4 turquoises on northwest, south, and east and west, and her house actually was protected, not the additional other outlying buildings, but her house was protected, and it worked well. So first of all, I just want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you.
What is her name? What is the lady's name?
That was Rachel. Rachel? Yes,
Rachel. Yeah. What's her last name?
Well, I'll tell you that on private. I'm not sure she wants to be public since this is recorded.
Okay, but now I have a name that I can say. Rachel took my class and went home and saved her house. So Rachel M. Yeah.
So we all did. Yeah. So we did protection dowsing techniques, and so that was very helpful. And like I said, there were 3 of us working, and so that was excellent. And I want to thank you also for, in the beginning of your program, you mentioned thanking the teachers, your past teachers, and where you learned, and your passion of dowsing, and you're wanting to remind us to activate our minds, to visualize, and, you gave simple techniques, whether it's a parking space or lights or, that's immediate confirmation for us to practice our minds, because really we are really unlimited. And I love your cleverness for your water wellness business. So, that's inspiring for anyone who wants to really delve into the water dowsing. You had your business cards, magnets, postcards, very excellent. And my favorite story is how clever of you and Shirley Runko to come up with that water wellness program. And I remember when Shirley, spoke over here at the NorCal Dowsers a couple times, she had mentioned that the business program both of you came up with, that was really gutsy to go to State Farm and offer your services. That's fun. And it's, it's practical. You're putting water dowsing. You're giving it's not just water dowsing, but weather modification. You're offering those services. And I love how you're thinking about the future for water dowsers. You gave people an excellent example. You might as well start getting paid $400 to $600 to find a well spot, which is really nothing compared to how many thousands of dollars it costs to be drilled. But, of course, we would want accuracy. And you gave people also an example of, if they have a contract. If you have a contract, what's going on, and there's an understanding of with the client and the water dowser. And you also gave examples of your dowsing projects, which was very helpful and illuminating. And I wanted to just thank you for being on the program. And if anyone wants to get a hold of James, they've got his phone number, 510-697-3076. And we can't thank you enough, James, again for being on the program.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand the check's in the mail.
Very cute. Yeah, to all of us, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see you all next month on the, let me look again here, October 21st.
That's it.
So, and Gladys McCoy will be on. Okay, tell everybody about it. We're looking forward to having you on the call and having Gladys on. Any final comments, Ed?
it was wonderful. I had a good time. I was looking forward to it, and I was trying to think how am I going to make this last for 30 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, it's gone already.
Yeah, and you did very well. Let me tell you that for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You did really.
Thank you, James.
Okay, so keep me in mind for if somebody doesn't show up for doing it. I can always jump in at the last minute.
Very thoughtful of you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Ciao.
Good night, everybody. Good night.